Coming up, tea, cycling, pandas, both giant ones and red ones, and a traditional Chinese wedding, plus a man balances a candle on his head, as I go in search of a decent cup of tea in China. A few years ago, Mrs. Crusader and I first set out on a mission to find a decent cup of tea. I assumed India would be the place, so we planned a cycle trip there. We visited roadside tea stalls, drank from chipped mugs and tiny glasses, and even toured a tea factory. But despite our efforts, we never found a good one, not even a 7 out of 10. While researching my blog, I discovered what the problem was. I'd come to the wrong country. China produces more tea than India, so that was the place I needed to be. So this trip to Chengdu was a chance to put that right and finally discover what a proper tea was meant to taste like. After an 11-hour flight and a bit of jet-lag-fueled sleep, we got down to business. I started at one of the city's oldest and busiest tea spots, the Hemming Tea House in People's Park. The place was heaving, every table full, every seat taken, every conversation at full volume. We eventually found a seat and ordered some black and jasmine tea, which was prepared in front of us. No milk, no sugar, just a handful of leaves floating in hot water. And surprisingly, that's exactly what it tasted like, with absolutely no flavour at all. However, I'd got in early. I found the longer you let it brew, the nicer it was. In fact, it was really rather pleasant, and certainly better than anything we found in India. But what about some cake? So we got panda cake, chocolate cake, bar of soap cake, swan cake, seed cake and bland cake. Let's see what they're like. Well, none of them was strictly to my taste. The panda cake was probably the most interesting, being a jelly sort of texture, but all in all they were mostly harmless. I don't think I'll be bothering with cake again with my tea on this trip. Getting tea and cake in China seemed pretty straightforward, quite literally a walk in the park. How wrong I was. Chengdu is the capital of Sichuan province and home to over 16 million people. It's known for hot pot, pandas, and one of the largest urban cycle networks in the world. And it's surprisingly laid back. People sitting around, playing mahjong and Chinese chess in the park. They drink tea by the litre and don't seem to be much of a hurry. But I had no time to loll about. The next day I turned to my preferred form of transport, the bicycle, to see if I could find more tea. With Mrs. Crusader and several fellow cycling guests, we headed off to hire bikes. Though the hiring process proved tricky, particularly as we spoke no Mandarin, nor would the bike hire any English. To make matters worse, in China they don't seem to have any large-sized bikes, which was required for a number of the taller members of our group, such as myself. Still, with the help of modern translation apps and plenty of pointing, we set off to ride Chengdu's 100-kilometre circular greenway route in search of tea. It was smooth paths, no traffic, and lots of green space. In fact, it was very easy cycling. But no tea. Not a drop. Most stopping points were vending machine based, and the few larger places didn't serve hot drinks. However, I did find a super giant sized pot noodle, although that's not really the same thing. Our breath was then taken away by a particularly large building, which turned out to be the Global Centre, the biggest building in the world by floor area. But despite its impressiveness, it was hardly tea. I needed a new plan. The next day we took a bullet train, think HS2 but built, to Lashan, home of the world's largest stone Buddha, hoping that outside the city tea might be easier to find. I stopped at the station Starbucks assuming they'd sell tea, even it was only going to be a tea bag and a bucket of hot water. But to my surprise, they didn't. And I finally began to realise that in China, tea is not something you can grab in a papered cup. It's an event, a ritual, a situation that cannot be hurried, which is exactly what I expected to find at the Big Buddha. 71 metres tall and carved into a cliff face, with serene temples and clouds of incense, but no tea. We searched every temple and pagoda, but not a single tea house was to be found. Just calm contemplation and plenty of crowds. 3 days into the trip and still only 1 cup of tea. In India, the tea may have been poor, but at least it was everywhere. In fact, China produces 40% of the world's tea, including all 6 varieties, but you wouldn't have thought it. The next day I decided a more nimble strategy was needed. With Mrs. Crusader and regular cycling companion Alistair, we downloaded a local bike hire app, unlocked a nearby bike and set off on a more focused tea hunt. So we've come to a park and we've managed to lock the bikes, which took longer than the actual ride itself. But anyway, the ride only cost us 48p, which seemed jolly good value. And now we're in search of a tea house. And in no time at all, we'd found one. Unfortunately, the tea was underwhelming. A yellow variety, slightly formal and lacking punch. But at last I'd had my second cup of tea.
This is the yellow tea.
So we set off again along the river, and soon we stumbled across a man selling tea and coffee from the back of his car. He seemed thrilled to see us. He laid out camping chairs and set up some Chengdu black tea, and it was excellent. Soon we were being filmed and photographed by curious locals, some of which insisted being filmed drinking tea with us. It may have been the novelty of our presence, or much more likely, my reputation as the Crusader had made it to China. But either way, we were minor celebrities that afternoon. The tea was a highlight, the bikes less so. A red nose and flower that squirts water, plus a big pair of shoes would have completed the look. That evening, we went to a traditional Chinese theatre show. Apparently, this is what passed for entertainment in ancient China, and most of the acts were very straightforward, and I reckon I could have mastered them within a couple of hours rehearsal. The standout was a comedy duo featuring a man balancing a candle on his head. Not sure about the comedy, as my Mandarin wasn't up to it, and the candle balancing was possibly the least impressive thing I've ever seen. Still, I did get a cup of tea at the start, even if it was on the average side. But then a tea-based act as a couple performed with long-spouted kettles. Consistently underwhelming, but after some theatrical twirling, they came into the audience to top up cups, including mine. Some water missed, and it wasn't particularly hot, but another cup of tea experience ticked off. And now the bit you've all been waiting for. Pandas! Anyone coming to Chengdu must visit the panda sanctuary, so we hopped in a taxi to see what all the fuss was about. Established in 1987 with just 6 rescued pandas, this sanctuary has grown into the world's largest captive panda population, now home to over 200. Although to be honest, it could easily have been people in panda suits. It's hard to tell the difference. Once you've seen a few, it all got a bit samey, apart from the red ones, so I went off in search of tea. Much to my surprise, the Panda Centre Cafe sold takeaway tea. Not teabag based, but a whole vat of pre-prepared tea. Rather strong, but probably the best cup of takeaway tea I've ever had. It inspired me to go and look at some more pandas. Apart from the hunt for tea, the other reason for the trip was to attend a wedding. So after looking at pandas all day, we headed to the bride's village. Or what used to be a village before being rebuilt as a small town during China's rapid modernisation. The day before the wedding, we were joined in traditional games and were treated to a tea ceremony. The tea resembles something scooped from a compost heap. Still, like many Chinese teas, it improved with time. While others enjoyed beer, wine and beija, I stuck with compost tea, which washed down another pre-wedding Chinese feast rather well. The wedding itself was held in a 500-seat venue, complete with lights, music and a celebrity host, who introduced the groom as he ceremonially fired arrows into the crowd. Your guess. Another tea ceremony featured during the event, where the bride and groom offered tea to their new in-laws. Although when I visit my children, I always have to make my own. It turned out to be quite a quick ceremony, as I think everyone wanted to have another Chinese feast. So the formal bit of the wedding's now over, and everyone's just ranching in reaction. I've come out to try and see if I can find a cup of tea. I've been taught the language. It's her cha. And that means drink tea apparently, and if I walk around enough saying that, I should end up with a cup of tea. So I'm going to try this little cafe area of the wedding complex first. Unfortunately, all I ever got offered was cigarettes. However, undeterred, I tried again with the bride's father, who understood and brought me a pot of green tea, which he diligently topped up every time I took a sip. Mild and refreshing, if a little grassy. On our final day, we took a 3-mile walk to a temple near the town. At first it looked deserted, but at the top of the steps we found a monk standing beside some teapots. I made my now well-practiced tea-drinking gesture, and she returned, not with cigarettes, but with glasses and a pot. It felt like the perfect time to attempt my first solo Chinese tea ceremony. I lifted the pot and poured some cups, only to realise it hadn't brewed yet. I quietly poured it back into the pot, waited for a few minutes and then tried again. Success! I served the group with a graceful pour and tested it myself. At last, tea worthy of the journey, all through a few yuan offered to the local Buddha. So next time I need a relaxing cup of tea, or I need to see a panda, I know just where to come.